You guys hear me? Yep, okay, good. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take you through a bunch of my work. It's in no particular order, and I'm just gonna kind of talk about the work. I have some movies, some of them are promotional things, TV commercials. I even have a SPYHUNTER treatment or a pitch document that it was the very last thing that I did at Midway right before they closed. And I think a lot of you guys haven't seen stuff like that, so I thought it'd be fun to show you. I also have loaded on the computer probably all the AutoCAD drawings, a lot of the sketches and stuff for a lot of the games. So if, like, you know, there's a bunch of Lord of the Rings guys in the room and some Dark Knight guys, we can dive into that stuff, and I can show you, I'll show you a bunch of concept stuff that never saw the light of day, which is stuff that I think you guys will like to see. So, being that this is Seattle, of course, this all runs on PowerPoint. So, as I said before, my friend Jim Anderson, whom I used to work with at Midway, we haven't seen each other in how long?
8 years.
8 years, 8, 9 years. He walked in, he says, "You look the same." I said, I don't think so. So this is George Gomez circa 1982. Just hitting my stride. I started at Midway right out of design school in 1978. I pretty much went to Midway because I was very confused as a guy in design school what I wanted to design, and I had a teacher that said you should do something that you're passionate about. And at the time, I had been playing some Midway games in the union at the university, and I looked up and it said, you know, Midway Games, Franklin Park, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And so with all the arrogance of a 22-year-old, I picked up the phone and called them and said, "I'm a designer and I think I can make your stuff better." So had a HR guy who didn't know what a designer was, and he invited me in for an interview. And between the time that I went and the time that I talked to him, I crammed for a couple of weeks and redesigned all the Midway stuff that I could find the way that I would do it. So when I walked in the door, I had this portfolio of very Midway specific stuff. And I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was right out of college and I absolutely had no clue. But the guys inside at the time, in 1978, you have to remember that the video game industry was primarily engineers. There was a lot of software engineers, and even software engineers in that era were trained as electrical engineers. They weren't really trained as computer science guys. So the company had a lot of software engineers and had mechanical engineers. They didn't have any designers. They had artists, which were primarily illustrators that had come out of the pinball side. And when somebody needed art, an artist would generate that art. Of course, the art, there was a big disconnect because somebody would tell this guy, draw a tank, and he would do this great airbrush rendering of a tank. And then somebody would say, yeah, we've got like 32 pixels by 32 pixels and you got 8 colors. So try again. And they were really lost. So when I walked in, they saw all this stuff, and the engineers kind of like, yeah, okay, so they didn't know what to do with me. I drew and I could make things, so they stuck me in the mechanical engineering department. It was a blessing in disguise. I didn't realize that at the time. The mechanical engineers really looked at me like a weird bird because I didn't do what they did exactly, and they didn't do what I do exactly. So just to kind of give you some feedback. So right up there on the corner it says, you know, that's my license to thrill. Not my license to kill, my license to thrill. That's a picture of my degree from college, and you'll notice that it doesn't say engineering, it says design. And so I have a great love for engineers. Engineers have been facilitating the implementation of my concepts for 30 years, and I've learned to work with them, and I love to work with them. And the engineers that I've worked with have a lot of respect for me because of the way that I do things. I don't just throw things over the fence, and I'm going to show you what that means a little later. But so an engineer works at machine-machine interface. How many gears, how many ball bearings, how many bits, how many bytes? A designer works at man-machine interface. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it do when you do something? So when I first went there, I was chock full of energy, like a freaking nuclear reactor, and I was constantly bothering people with game ideas. And of course, I was just a pest. And for a long time, all I got to do was style cabinets and control systems for coin-operated video games. And there were a couple of guys that were in, there was a hardware engineer, a guy named Natish Ghosh, and there was a software engineer, a guy named Bill Adams. And they were very frustrated. They were kind of associated to a production group. What a production group does is it takes stuff that comes out of an R&D group and they make it real. And so it's not a lot of fun. It's a lot of nitty-gritty, detail-oriented grinding. And the guys in R&D just kind of throw it over the fence. It doesn't have, you got to spray the boards with cool spray to keep them working, and it's just a mess. And these poor production guys have to make the stuff real. They have to worry about somebody beating the hell out of it on the street and all this stuff. It's got to be mass producible, and it's got to cost the right amount and all this kind of stuff. And I was kind of in that group. And so the three of us, very frustrated, talked the company into letting us do games, and the company was like, yeah, okay, and so we were doing this at night. We weren't doing it on our time. And right around that time, the hardware guy had designed a hardware set, and it really worked. It went on to become the Midway Card Rack 2, which a lot of you guys have in your games. It's what's in Tron. It's called the MCR2. And it was really reliable, and it did all kinds of cool things. And so what happened is the licensing guys in the company heard about this Walt Disney movie called Tron, and they went and got this license. And we talked the company into letting us, the company was having an internal competition amongst the company's development groups to develop Tron. And it was on a very tight schedule, 8 months, because it had to coincide with the launch of the movie. And we owned the Aladdin's Castle arcade chain at the time. And they were going to put a Tron in every Aladdin's Castle and have a competition amongst the kids all over the country, which was going to culminate in 25 Tron games in Madison Square Garden. And then the winners would win, and the kid got a Tron, and we would then all get whisked away in limos to Tavern on the Green for dinner with the people from the movie, and then off to the movie premiere for Tron. And that's exactly what happened. But before that, we had to do this game, and we entered this competition, and the company had some heavy hitter development groups. Dave Nutting and Associates. Dave Nutting would pull up in his Ferrari, and engineering was like this big wall of glass and drawing tables, right? No computers. I was drawing on a drawing table. I look, oh man, here comes Dave Nutting. Look at that dude. He would get out, he's got white jeans with cartoons on them. He's got a red Ferrari, I'm like, God, I so want to be that guy. I want to be him, right? And Dave Nutting would come in, one day it was Cowboy Day. Dave Nutting and his crew would come in for a meeting. These guys are all wearing cowboy boots and hats. What the hell? I'm not making this up. And if anybody knows the people from that era, people will confirm this. So I so wanted to be that guy, and Atish and Bill wanted to be that guy too. We entered this competition against these guys. These guys all took the thing for granted. After all, they already had Ferraris. They didn't, you know, they showed up at the playoffs, so to speak. They had nothing. They had nothing. Dave Nutting stood in front of the room and waved his arms, said we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And we, unbeknownst to all these guys, have been working our asses off. And we had shit moving on the screen, and we had, you know, I had storyboards, and if you look really close behind me, like right here, that's the light cycle storyboard for Tron. You see it? Like right there. So we had all this stuff. You know, I had a cabinet. I had taken the glowing grip. So I'll tell you about the glowing grip. The glowing grip, I did that grip for a Dave Nutting game called Gorf. If you go out to the Gorf that's out there and you look inside the little lens right here, I hid my name in there. My name's in there. It looks like an LED grid. Find my name in there. Go out to and you'll see my name. So I had, because, you know, I mean, Dave Nutting got to sign his stuff, but George Gomez, who the hell is that? You know, Dave Nutting had a Ferrari. So I had a grip, and laying on my desk from Gorf, and we had been having trouble with the trigger switch. People were using it so much it was wearing out. And my boss said to me, he goes, you got to fix the switch. And he says, I don't give a shit what you do, you got to fix the switch, you got to change it, whatever. And now, this is not, you know, now I open up SolidWorks and I make the grip transparent and I spin it around and I then run the FEA simulation program and it moves the switch and I go, oh yeah. Back then I had nothing, so I asked the molder, I said, why don't you mold me a clear one so I can see what the hell's going on with the trigger in the grip. And he molded me a clear one and I had it laying on my desk, and I had a black light in my room from some other project laying there. And it was late at night, and I was walking out the door, and I was about to flick the switch, and I looked over, and oh my God, that grip is glowing blue. And I turned right back around, and I went to work, and the next day, you know, a couple weeks later, we were doing this presentation. I got Dave Nutting's got a Ferrari and a lot of arm waving. I had a glowing blue grip and storyboards and cabinet designs, and Atish and Bill had crap moving around on the screen. They didn't know what hit them. We got to do the game. That's the story of Tron. So, you know, I still sort of work the old-fashioned way. I sketch a lot when I'm ideating things, and before I get into CAD, I do a lot of stuff. So you're going to see a lot of my sketches today. They're really rough because they're for me. They get prettier when somebody else is going to see them. You guys are going to get to see them real raw, the way I do them for myself. The difference is now I have this cool Wacom drawing tablet. I also have it on this computer. I can flip the screen around and draw on it. It's very cool. This is something from much later. I don't know if Jimmy Anderson maybe remembers this. This is from in the late 90s. So one of the things I do is I try to come up with stuff that has points of difference and that has essentially a business reason for being, because early on I was just about cool, but then I found out that in order to talk to the guys that hold the purse strings, it's got to have a reason for being in their world, and in their world it's got to make money. So there was a lot of complaints. 1999, we were still in, Midway was still in, had a finger in a lot of things, meaning we were in coin-op business and in the home business, and there was a lot of complaints about the fact that we were married to the success of the piece of software. And so, you know, we work really hard, we make a piece of software, put it out there. If nobody likes the game, we don't make any money. So it occurred to me, we need a bread and butter product line. We need a product line that is there regardless of whether the game is popular or not. So thinking about this, I came up with this thing called RACE. Real Arcade Control Equipment, and it hooks up to your game console and it basically looks and feels like the real Midway stuff, the stuff we would put on coin-op stuff. And then I came up with a twist, which I have a patent on, which is when the Midway controller sees the Midway software, it unlocks all kinds of cool stuff, right? So you get more tracks, more cars, more Mortal Kombat guys, more weapons, more cool stuff. It'll work with the, it'll work with the EA game, just won't unlock anything. So these are my sketches, and then of course I had to pitch management, so management sees the pretty renderings, right? Here's a gamepad, a gun before guns were, illegal. All right, so now let's see. Now you're going to see a movie.
Ready?
It's Crash and Bash Demo Derby,
Boys playing Crash and Bash, yes dear.
where you try to demolish the other guy's car. Crash him forward, bash him back. You tear each other's car apart piece by piece.
You're history.
Until there's nothing left. Crash and Bash Demo Derby comes with everything you see here. Batteries not included. From Galoob.
Yeah, dude.
All right, so
Fun as hell.
So in 1984, the video game business crashed and burned horribly, right? That was like, people, the famous ETs buried in the desert days, right? The last, leading up to 1984, 1983, we had done SPYHUNTER, and that was the only glimmer of hope. And you're going to see lots of SPYHUNTER stuff in a bit. But I decided, actually I was not there to revel in the glory of SPYHUNTER. I decided that, I was really tired of the layoffs. There were layoffs happening all around me. We had gone, the manufacturing facility had gone from making 1,100 coin-operated games a day to 100, okay? So when at the height of 1,100, there were semis lined up in Franklin Park, ruining traffic for what seemed like blocks with material, raw material, and semis leaving with finished goods from the Midway factory. And in those days, the Midway factory was a machine unlike anything you've ever seen. I mean, my boss took me from the office area on my interview, and he threw open the doors, and Space Invaders were on the assembly line. We made 70,000 Space Invaders, to give you a clue, right? And it was like, that scene in Indiana Jones where they take the crate into the thing, and it's a one perspective into the distance. I mean, I was 22 years old. I looked out there was freaking Space Invaders as far as the eye could see. I was like, yeah, I think this is my job. The business crashed and burned. While I was working at Midway, there was a toy development company in Chicago called Marvin Glass and Associates, and they decided they were going to do video games. And so the company said, you can't just bring in pretty sketches and storyboards, you have to actually develop the games. And they said, okay, we're going to do that. So they did games like Domino Man and Tapper and Timber and thank you, Journey. Okay, so, but at the time, when they were learning, the company said, why don't you go over there and take a hardware set and take the ARC tools and show them how to do your thing. So I did, and I got to know those guys. So in 1984, the business is crashing. They're getting out of the video game business, and they're going to focus on their core business, which is toys. And I called up one of the partners and said, hey, I want to be a toy inventor. And so he gave me a job, and I invented that you just saw. That was the TV commercial that played when that product was sold. And so it came just like that in the box, no sand. You provide your own sand. All right, let's move on.
Your love for car has never been more real. Introducing the first ever Pontiac G8 GT. the most powerful car under 30 grand.
Okay, so I was thrilled the day that Pontiac's ad agency called Midway and said, we want to use SPYHUNTER because it is the demographic for the Pontiac G8 is the guys that were playing SPYHUNTER back in the day when you were making it. So, you know, I'm 55 years old. I just turned 55 on June 1. And so if you think about it, I was like in my early 20s when I was making that game. And those guys are now in the, you know, it's too bad Pontiac's gone, but this came out in, I think, 07 or something like that. And I was thrilled that they wanted to do that. There's definitely a big story behind SPYHUNTER also, but let's kind of move on, and in the Q&A we can cover some of the stuff. I don't have a lot of stuff left over from that era because a lot of things were paper, and so I have some things, but this happens to be the very first set of control grips that I made handmade for the original sit-down SPYHUNTERs. I still have this, by the way. There's some guy with a kind of a video game museum or something. He wants me to give it to him to put it in there, which I think is kind of cool, but it also seems a little bit ridiculous to me that some of this stuff that I made is going to be in a museum. Then, of course, there's me as the bad guy in SPYHUNTER 3. If you play SPYHUNTER 3, the development team, by the way, I worked on the original SPYHUNTER, and then I never worked on another SPYHUNTER. So I will show you the SPYHUNTER that I proposed to work on had Midway not blown up. You will see that treatment today. So the guys who were working on the game, as a tribute, they made me the bad guy in the game. So if you play a SPYHUNTER 3, I am running around ruling the world, or attempting to. And I have stolen the interceptor. So when they did their presentation to management, by the way, this painting, that's what this painting is from. They did their presentation to management, and the company used to do these things called executive reviews. Every quarter, a bunch of guys in a room just like this, and every game team comes up and presents status on their stuff. And so everybody, I was running a team called NBA Ballers, and we made a basketball game, an NBA licensed basketball game, and I was done with my presentation, and my executive reviews, I'm done with my presentation. I am so out of there. I don't want to, it's nice that you got a game, but I don't want to see it. I don't care. I was like, you're totally burned out and you've had it. So, and somebody caught me on the way. I said, you got to wait for the SPYHUNTER 3 presentation. And then this was their opening screen. The executive producer got up there and he said, and now, Gomez is Gomez. Broke the room up. All right, so I've done novelty games. This is a novelty game that I did right around the first Gulf War, when Gulf Wars were popular. Yeah. And if you look closely, I did a lot of stuff here. I did the art. I did also a lot of stuff. If you look in there, it's this Captain G. Gomez, and I've taken out all kinds of things. This is like a remake of the old Midway Whirlybird. Did you ever see it? You guys any old enough to see that? Yeah. It's a helicopter that actually is on a counterweighted boom, right? And it flies around, and it's got springs on the side, and the springs hit the targets. And of course, I animated all the targets. The Iraqi tank would move around, and the radar domes would track, and there was a big missile in the back that came up, and it was really fun, and you flew this helicopter, it's very cool. So this is a concept that never saw the light of day. This is, I had an idea for a crane. I mean, isn't Wall-E a crane? Really? Rock'em Sock'em Robots, one of my favorite toys as a kid. Wouldn't you like to see a big ass Rock'em Sock'em? Okay, you've all seen Big Buck Hunter, right?
Fortunately.
Come on, look at Creatures of the Deep. And then Batman lent me the car. This is in Chicago when I was working on Dark Knight. I got invited to the set of the movie. Have you ever seen movie making in real time? Man, talk about hurry up and wait. It's a good thing they got really good food. Because, you go to the set and you just sit there for hours. And then somebody goes, they're going to do it, they're going to do it. And then you watch and you're like, what happened? That was it. You didn't see it? All that stuff, I mean, you do not see the Batmobile do a J-turn on State Street. The coolest thing though was all the street signs in Chicago, in downtown Chicago, everything from the CTA signs, everything had all been totally doctored. The entire thing was Gotham Transit Authority, I mean, and all the names of the streets, everything was awesome. So that was cool, and the food was really good. So here's some Batman stuff, just ideation sketches, a multi-ball holding device, right? Park the 3 balls and then spin it, centrifugal force, didn't see the light of day. That's the real deal. That's the Dark Knight AutoCAD drawing. We can dive into those a little bit later, and you can see the realities of my life. It's not just inventing pretty pictures. As I say, when I tell you that the engineers really like me, the engineers really like me because I give them like stuff they can really work from, and it's like this AutoCAD drawing. I also give them stuff like this, right? So the difference is that throwing it over the fence would mean I want to do a ramp, and it's got a Batmobile, and the ball runs on it, and you figure it out. So what I do is I do this. And so I give him a sketch that shows basically what I see in my head, and I describe it all for him, and then he studies it, and he says, yeah, this has got to be stronger, and this has got to be thicker, and this has got to be, this coil's not strong enough, and your pivot's in the wrong place, and I need a bearing over here, and stuff like that. But I don't just throw it over the fence, right? So there's my sketches on the the ramp, and you can also see in this lower corner here, you're going to see a little bit of this. My foam core mock-up of the whitewood, the first whitewood. That's what you're seeing here. The early version of the crane at one point was going to be a ramp. Can you see that? So the ball was going to get dropped onto the top of the crane, and not only was the crane going to move so you could hit the ball underneath it, but the ball was also going to travel over it and be deposited in different places as it moved. And then down here, this is how we work nowadays. If I'm in the way here, you guys got to let me know. So this is the way we work nowadays. This is SolidWorks. It's a 3D engineering modeling program, and it's incredibly powerful. AutoCAD is a 2D program for all intents and purposes, and SolidWorks is a solid modeler, and it really allows us to really get down in there and see what we're doing and work very efficiently. This is the underside of the crane, and then the top of the crane. Actually, no, I take it back. What this is that is the, you guys will see that my stuff is evolutionary. That is the underside of the Monster Bash Dracula mech. And this is the top side of the Batman crane. Do you see a similarity? So what I did is I took Dracula's mech and said, let's put it on top of the playfield. Let's move it around, hit the ball. There's the real crane, and then the fake crane, or the foam core crane. And you can see how things changed, right? At some point in time, I had a ramp. This ramp was going to feed the moving crane ramp. And then in the real game, that's not there. The Joker and some of the original stuff. So, I wanted to do these multiple Joker reveals, right? And then they showed us the Joker, and everybody's going, you can't put that face on a pinball machine. It's just too brutal. It's like, you can't do that. So I was trying to come up with that's an evil Joker face that I found on the internet, which I actually liked better, but didn't get to use. So what does the designer do? You guys hear a lot about a pinball design team is made up of many different guys, right? Now, at the top of the heap, the guy in the pilot seat is the designer. He's responsible for the vision and the implementation of the playfield, how the toys work, all that kind of stuff. Behind him, in the number 2 seat, there's a co-pilot, and that's the software guy, right? The programmer. And so the programmer don't get me wrong. The programmer, it contributes to design a lot. I mean, he makes all kinds of contributions to design. It's just that in the way of the world, because at one particular moment in time there were no programmers, and yet there were pinball machines, the designer was driving the boat. And so there's the programmer, and then there's usually a mechanical engineer that is making the reality of the designer's vision reliable and producible and all that kind of stuff. There is a sound designer like Mr. David Thiel sitting in the back of the room that, and if you saw his presentation, you understand the importance of a guy that makes things essentially help you get feedback. Because the reality is that when somebody says, man, that shot feels great, what are you talking about? It's a silver ball underneath a piece of glass, and your feedback is 2 buttons on the machine. Well, the feedback is there's switches and they trigger sounds, and things happen. Physical things happen. So that's feedback, and the sound designer's job is part of that feedback, right? He's the guy that cuts up the speech, composes music thematically to the game, etc. I'm sorry? Heath, no, it didn't. It didn't. It was a tragedy, but it didn't. It was like, and then of course there's an artist, and the artist is usually a really talented guy that composes the beautiful art that we see on a pinball machine. My artists, because of the fact that I'm an industrial designer by trade, have to deal with a lot of hell, and that hell is this right here. So you see that marked up print? I hate these Batmen. Can we use more than 2 Joker thugs, right? Kevin O'Connor, by the way, has been my artist on Monster Bash and just tons of my games, NBA Fast Break, we work together very well. But this is what he gets back from me. I tell him, bigger signs, continue magenta, continue the blue, right? So it's like I essentially direct it to be as the way that I envision it, and he implements it greatly. The cabinet. This was one where we're getting in the digital age. We're getting when we get a style guide from a movie company, for example. It says, this is the logo, and you can't do this with it, and if you're using this background, you can only put Batman on this color, and they control everything you do and approve everything you do.
Everything?
Yes. Yes, everything. They have right of refusal on absolutely every piece of design in every area. It is their license, and you are getting permission to implement it. So they can tell you no. They can say, Batman doesn't do that. And I've heard this. I've heard this many times. I said, Batman will be doing this, and they said, no, Batman doesn't do that. So they must know.
How much time does that add to the process?
A lot. So, where I was going with this conversation, when we do the Q&A, we can get into all this stuff in detail. But I want to keep it moving because I got a lot of stuff to cover. You guys want to see some of this stuff. I want to make sure we get it all in. So we're getting better and better stuff from the movie companies in terms of art, and so, nowadays I can take a piece of art from the movie company and compose something, right? So I did this side of the cabinet. Basically, what did I do? I took a piece of beautiful movie art and told Kevin, we need a city in the background behind the bike, and look how cool the bike fits on the cabinet. And send him a Photoshop file and said, do this. So it's cool. Now we're going to see another movie. I'm not sure what this is. When I was a little kid, I grew up, playing street basketball in Chicago. And I've just always wanted to make a pinball basketball game.
Welcome to NBA Fast Break Pinball. The
playfield design in this game is very interesting. It's got a basket, first of all, because, I mean, it's a basketball game. And you're going to take that pinball and you're going to shoot it through the basket. And there's 4 holes in front of the basket. You can pass the ball from any of those 4 holes. There's a defender working against you, and he'll go to whatever hole that you have the ball in. You pass the ball away, you take a shot on basket. You're working against a 24-second shot clock, just like the real thing.
Get ready for some prime-time basketball.
The scoring in Fast Break totally parallels real basketball. You know, you shoot free throws, they're worth 1 point. You know, you shoot around, it's 2, and of course there's 3-pointers. It creates a tremendous spirit of competition. I know what I have to do to catch you. It's a very relatable number. It's not a billion points.
Oh, he buried that one.
You know, the backglass feature is in response to our customers who wanted something different happening in pinball, some new way of playing.
Today's game is being brought to you by Valley Pinball in conjunction with the NBA.
The NBA is tremendous. It's a tremendous property. I mean, it's got the kind of equity that a license needs to have. I mean, we've got all 29 NBA teams in this game, and we've got 5 starters from every team. It's earned very well in a variety of locations. And that's really, I mean, let's face it, in our business, that's a huge selling point. Fast Break includes a tournament software package. And what that means is that the operator can set up and run a tournament. In the right location, it can be a huge contributor to earnings. I really think it's going to be one of the best games we've ever made.
Gentlemen, I am out of here. What a game!
My audience hates this game, it's one of my favorites. But this game was, somebody asked me in an interview yesterday that I did, for the show, can you talk about a controversial game design scenario? You know, like some time where you or the company or the team didn't agree. And this Fast Break is it. Fast Break was my 3rd pinball game that I ever designed. Pinball was really in the crapper at the time, and we just had the first kind of cracks in the foundation. It just happened, meaning that we had a big layoff in engineering, and it was a significant layoff. It was a layoff that saw some icons in pinball design, guys like Barry Ausler and John Trudeau, get laid off, and so it was not a pretty time. And the scoring in Fast Break, everybody up in engineering, you got to understand Williams Engineering, we were essentially the top of the heap. We were the best there was. The competition, we used to say, is down the hall, not across the street. We never worried about what Sega Pinball was doing. We never worried about what Gottlieb was doing. We just like, yeah, whatever. We just, my competition was the designer that was coming up at the same time, because we launched a Williams branded game and a Bally branded game, and that's really the guy I was competing with. And I did the scoring in Fast Break because it made sense to me. 1s, 2s, and 3s. I mean, come on, it's basketball. And this was like, it was blasphemy in pinball. What? No. It should be so I'm having this argument. You want to score you want me to shoot a 3 and get 100,000 points? What sense does that make? But Williams Engineering was a religion, and religions have spiritual leaders, and the spiritual leaders up in engineering were really up in arms about this. I mean, this is like, you really gotta. My mechanical engineer, I get stressed out. I get like, and my mechanical engineer says, it's just a freaking pinball game. No one dies. No one dies. Chill out. And I was thinking, but I got the president, the CEO of the company is calling me. Neil Nicastro is calling me. He's going, I don't know about that score. I don't know about that 1s, 2s, and 3s. Neil, it's a freaking basketball game. I'm having this argument up and down the company. What won the day is that at Williams, Williams was an engineering-driven company, which if you've ever worked at one and you're in product development, you will thank your lucky stars. That means that the product is the first thing that happens. It's the genesis of life. It's the thing that, you do the product, and then marketing comes around, and then sales comes around, and manufacturing comes around. They are in support of the product. It's not marketing telling engineering what to do. So Williams was an engineering-driven company. And the game designers, one of the reasons that I went there was because designers were gods, and it was creative freedom like I've never had. So in the midst of this turmoil, and my own peers were saying, yeah, you know, he's a novelty game designer. He came from novelty. It's, you know, it's a novelty game. It's not a pinball game. You know, we should sell that in the novelty line, not the pinball line. Larry DeMar was running engineering. Larry DeMar said to me, he goes, I have reservations about the score, but he said, at the end of the day, you're the game designer, it's gonna be your call. I said, okay, my call? Really? You really mean that? Yeah, it's your call. He says, okay, 1s, 2s, and 3s, that's what it is. That's what we shipped. You guys didn't like it, did you?
I like it.
The following program is sponsored by Williams Pinball, makers of Monster Bash.
Yes, Master. Get ready while I flip the switch.
You guys know this game, of course. It's probably it's not the most popular game I've made. Lord of the Rings apparently is. It is one of my favorites. If it's not my favorite, it's one of my favorites. Development teams are, you know, you can't plan success. You can try to, but the reality is that like a basketball team or like any other collective effort, there are times when the sun and the moon and the stars line up. There are times when you have a championship team. This was a championship team. This was a team of really great guys that were so into this. At 3 o'clock, we had to kick everybody out of Lyman Sheets, the programmer's office, because you know he had to get work done. And we used to have we'd have a daily play meeting in his office, and you know it was super competitive. You know, Vince Ponarelli, the sound designer, myself, the artist, everybody was like just in there playing games. And finally, you know, it's like at 3 o'clock, we're all right, get out of his office. He's got to work. But it was, you can't, I've been on games where no one is going into the programmer's office to play. And that's a sad thing. You want to change it, don't you? You really do. But, you know, sometimes, you know, the puck gets stolen. And sometimes it doesn't. And you score. And you know, we scored with this. It's one of my favorite. You know, we decided, we said, hey, we can't make these monsters scary, you know, because they're not scary, right? I mean, we've seen too much. So okay, let's make them fun. Let's make them a rock band and take them on tour. A rock band? Yeah, a rock band. You know, Frank plays keyboards, and you know, and Drac is egotistical. I mean, you know. I will mesmerize you with my semicircular motion. I came up with that line. It's one of the. Everybody loves that. You know, everybody loves that. Okay, so I told you that I had never worked on another Spy Hunter other than the original one, and much to my dismay, the company. I went to Midway right out of college, and then I was there 7 years. And I left. I went to Marvin Glass. I was there 5 years. I was bouncing around. I was on my own for a while, and doing those novelty games that I showed you and stuff. And then I went to Williams in '93, and started my design career as a pinball designer. Somewhere in that time frame, Bally had sold Midway and the Bally brand to Williams Electronics. And so Midway became the video game branch of Williams. So, and a lot of people don't know that, and so it's kind of like they think all three companies were together all along, and they weren't. So when I was in pinball, when the first PlayStation 2 Spy Hunter was done. As a matter of fact, I think I was working on Pinball 2000. I think it was 99, right around there. PlayStation 2 had just been launched, and Spy Hunter, the remake, the very first Spy Hunter, was actually driven by a guy named Michael Gottlieb of Gottlieb fame, right? And Michael was a producer at Midway Games, and Michael said to the company, hey, Gomez's Spy Hunter, it would make a great PS2 game. And so he found a development team, and they developed that out there. It was a third-party development. He just basically managed the process. He was a third-party guy. But, you know, it's a small world, this whole development thing, right? Michael Gottlieb, you know, Gottlieb Pinball, all this. The first Spy Hunter was, the PlayStation 2 Spy Hunter, the very first one, the launch title, was a very good game. The subsequent ones, Spy Hunter 3 and you know, were not so much. And so I would, if you own those games and you put them in, there is the requisite interview with me in the, you know, the extra stuff that you get when you buy a game. And I was always very polite, and you know, I was happy that the franchise that I invented was being continued, etc. But I really wanted to get back to doing something. So the last basketball game I worked on, we had really, I worked on a street-themed basketball game that was essentially the extension of the original classic Midway basketball games, you know, Jam, Showtime, etc. That Mark Trammell invented and made, and Mark Trammell and I were friends. We worked on the first NBA Ballers game together, and then I went on to carry the torch with the franchise, and I was the executive producer on all of the NBA Ballers games. NBA Ballers is an over-the-top street basketball game with a lot of lifestyle elements. By the time we did the third one for the PS3 and the Xbox 360, we pretty much had tired the thing out, and we didn't do very well with it. So the company said, hey, you know, we're not going to do another Ballers, so you ought to start thinking about what you're going to do with your development team. So development teams in the modern era, you're basically asking the company to give you $30 million. $30 million. Please write me a check for $30 million. I will go away for 2 years and work, and hopefully I will make you $100 million. That's the bargain that you make with the devil, and that's the deal. So when you go see your banker and you want to buy a new car, you prove to them, like, you know, here's my paycheck stub and here's why I can afford this car. So making a game pitch to get $30 million to make something is like that. And that's what you're going to see here. You're going to see my game pitch to produce a Spy Hunter that was never made and will never be made because Midway doesn't exist anymore. And I don't believe that this is a property that was picked up, maybe it was, by Warner Brothers, who bought some of the intellectual property from Midway. The demise of Midway was very sad to me. It was a company that I have, like, I've spent a great deal of creative energy and lifeblood and I think that there's a lot of reasons why it failed. You know, it was a tough thing, but I really had fun doing this. This was, so how does a game cost $30 million? Well, the development teams are like 100 guys. And you know, my job as executive producer was basically to manage this mess and sometimes contribute creatively to the process. In the last few years, not so much, right? Because managing 100 guys is a bitch. And I was a game team is a business unit, so when they tell me, you know, you can't spend more than $15 million, you know, I have to manage that money. I have to allocate those resources. I have to figure out how we're going to get it done in time and get it to market. And I have to deal with Microsoft and Sony and all that stuff. So I might walk into somebody's office and say, I don't like that camera. Can we move it a little bit or something? But I mean, so that was my, you know, my creative contribution to in the last few years to these games. So what happens to game teams is they, when you finish a game, everybody gets split off to help other game teams that are in progress, except for a very small core team that goes on to try to pitch the next thing that you're going to do. So this pitch was put together by me and 3 guys, and I actually did a great deal of the 3D Studio Max models that you're going to see because this franchise is dear to my heart, and I loved working on this pitch. And this is the last Midway thing that I did, and so I really had fun with it. And I'm glad it was a fitting finale. I spent the summer not dealing with budgets or schedules or 100 guys. It's just me and 3 guys and me and my design tools. And it was crazy. It was like, I felt like, holy shit, I'm 22 again. It was really fun. So watch this. I definitely need lights off or down for this one. You don't have to turn them off. You can just turn them down. Okay. So what I was trying to do is introduce a new mechanic of play and some other things to the fiction of Spy Hunter, right? So the hover capacity, by adding hover capacity interceptor, the idea was that, you know, you had these jump jets and they would just elevate you, at which point the wheels would flip and become fans, which would then, but it takes the driving mechanic, you lose the friction of the road. So it creates a new control mechanic, which you can play some games with. Obviously, this is very rough, and you know, it doesn't have the right textures, it's not lit properly, all that stuff. But in reality, all of the video games that you see that look like $1 million and very cinematic when you put them into your PlayStation 3 or your Xbox 360 begin life like this. So what you saw is a bunch of really you know, prototype, work in progress kinds of things. You know, we're trying to introduce new cameras, introduce the idea of, you know, we wanted to do this thing called, on Xbox Live, we wanted to do this thing called Friday Night Boss Fights. So all week long, you work on building your guy, and you could play this. So you build up the capacity interceptor by defeating different enemies, obviously, but you can be stupid and just destroy the guy, or you can be selective, and if you destroy him the right way, you then can capture his weapons and apply them to the interceptor. So my vision was that at Friday Night Boss Fights, everybody goes online with their customized interceptor, and all the interceptors are different. And essentially, it's an arena free-for-all, which extends the game and gives the game different play value. My fiction was that you know, the interceptor has a dirty little secret. And by the way, you know, the pilots of the interceptor are essentially you know, referred to as spy hunters, but it's essentially kind of like, you know, Navy pilots are called aviators. It's not. It's kind of a slang term. You know, F-15 pilots are called eagle drivers, and so it's like that was the notion. So the interceptor's dirty little secret is it never requires fuel, but the guy that, you know, pilots the interceptor doesn't know why, and as the game evolves, he figures it out. And the reality is that the interceptor is really got a nuke in it. He doesn't even know this. They won't tell him what it is. And in the end, he figures it out, and the game ends with him having to destroy himself and the interceptor by using the nuke against his enemy. How fun is that? So, and as you play the game, you know, I was so into the notion of how I was going to reveal this secret. It'll never be. Okay, so I don't think, I mean, I know I'm running late. Oh, here's some of the models. I had a lot of fun with this. I did all this stuff. I'm big on, you know, I don't know if you guys know this, but the weapons truck in Spy Hunter came about because the programmer and I were having some fights about Tom Leone, who's not with us anymore. But Tom Leone and I, Tom, by the way, was Cuban, and so am I. And so back in those days, they called us the crazy Cubans. Tom, by the way, is the programmer of the Tron tank rack. And you know, I designed it, he programmed it, and I did some of the art for it. And that's how we hooked up to work on Spy Hunter. So, but Tom wanted the weapons to grow on the car. You know, you just drive along and you earn them, and all of a sudden your car's got this stuff. And I'm like, no, machine guns just don't grow on your car. So you need to go in the weapons truck, and you know, we load you up. And at the beginning, that's the only reason for the weapons truck. And then once we got the weapons truck in the game, the weapons truck actually became a strategy which he developed by selecting when he brought it out. And always, you know, did you ever wonder why, oh my God, I'm out of ammo and there's no weapons truck and there's like 100 guys on my case, right? It's Tom's strategy for the weapons truck. So I decided, how could the weapons truck not have any weapons? So this weapons truck is like armed to the teeth. And I was gonna, the fun part was I wanted at some point in time, a couple of waves in the game, you were gonna drive this big ass truck. And you were gonna wreak havoc with this truck. Also wanted to do a thing where in co-op play, you drive, I shoot, you know? Because I mean, you see how many weapons that thing has? All right. Okay, so that's it. Ask away. I know, by the way, I didn't cover any Pinball 2000 stuff because, I mean, that's been covered to death, I think, but I'll answer any questions you have about Pinball 2000.
There's a movie out, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a movie, the Tilt movie, right? You want to know about Pinball 2000? Well, I'm sorry?
Available from the Pin Game Journal booth.
Available. Go to the Pin Game Journal, get the Tilt movie. It's actually pretty cool and everything you ever wanted to know about Pinball 2000.
Hey, how you doing? I'm just wondering, like, if you've ever, like, if you've ever had to sacrifice your artistic integrity.
I'm laughing already.
How do you justify that on like an interpersonal basis? Not that I'm trying to judge you. I mean, I would jack off a dog if someone's paying me enough. But like, how do you justify that when somebody's like telling you from?
You know what? I mean, it's my artistic integrity. I fight very hard for the things I believe in, and sometimes I win. You guys know that I think the work speaks for itself, and I win more than I lose. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the opportunity to do to have done as many games as I've done. I'm blessed that I get to do something I really like. It's a privilege to be a designer. It's not a guarantee or anything like that. You know, it's and I think that I do the best I can. You know, I mean, yeah, there's compromises. Sure, there is. In the back.
I think around the first two SPYHUNTER games on PlayStation 2, there's like kind of rumors that there'd be a movie.
Yeah, there's always it's that kind of property, you know, that and there's been umpteen attempts, you know. I think The Rock was going to be in it, and yeah.
If you've got questions, can you come to the microphones, please?
Okay. Was Monster Bash was the first game you worked with Lyman Sheets on?
Yes, it was.
And you'd worked with Larry DeMar before that?
No, I worked with Tom Euban was the programmer on Corvette, Johnny Mnemonic, and NBA Fast Break. And then I worked with Lyman on Monster Bash. I worked with Keith Johnson on Lord of the Rings. I worked with like 10 guys on Revenge from Mars. And
so I guess my question was like, how does it change the process when you get a new programmer, because they sound like they're such an integral part of the process?
Well, it changes it. It definitely changes it. They all, you know what, those guys have incredible skill and passion also, and they bring their own vision to it. And so, you know, here, I'll show you, this will give you a little bit of just a little glimpse into this Sopranos. Sopranos design ideas. Sopranos design ideas 1.1. So this is the kind of stuff that I generate when I'm ideating on a game, and this goes to the programmer. And then he, in turn, takes this stuff and he comes back with his own list and his own vision, right? So you know, primary goal, basically become a made guy, or become boss rather. You know, and here's some ideas, you know, hijack a truck, make a delivery, break some kneecaps, drive the boss, steal some cars, whack somebody, you know, run the executive game, right? It's you know, here's a partial potential food list for use on inserts. Right? I was gonna have a shot where you built up and, you know, manicotti, rigatoni, lasagna, soufflatelli, linguine, calamari, baked ziti, you know. Stugatz multiball. It's a two-ball multiball. Bada bing, feature, the fish, cache. So you know what? The programmer he's an artist too. It's just a different art. And he makes a big difference. Lord of the Rings, right? Let's talk about Lord of the Rings for a minute. The fan base loves the game, right? It's a fiction I wasn't into. Thank God Keith Johnson was. I mean, funny, Keith Johnson and Chris Grainer was the sound guy, right? And they were way into this fiction. They were like salivating, Lord of the Rings. I would show up. I did not know the names of the characters. I would call the Balrog the Fangor monster or something, and they would and Keith would get out of his mind. He would go, "It's the Balrog!" So, yeah, those guys make a huge contribution.
So if that's 5 pages, how many pages did you have for Lord of the Rings?
About the same, really. Yeah, about the same. And they're all a little different, right? But I mean, but like Keith would say, we need a thing with the spider. Oh, I haven't read that far. Right? Right?
Aside from the glow joystick, what were some other unintended design things that just kind of came along?
Wow, man, we could be here for 3 days. It's the nature of design and invention, right? It's like, when I first worked at Midway, we worked on a board, and I would make drawings, and they would go into the model shop, and the model shop would give me back my parts and screwed together. When I went to work at Marvin Glass and Associates, those guys taught me something that is just absolutely, it's become a part of my process. And it totally speaks to what you're talking about, and that is get your hands on the thing like right now and start cutting something and make something because there is no 3D computer program, there is no 2D computer program, no sketch pad in the world that is going to allow you to make the discoveries you make when you take a piece of plastic and you bend it or something. The world is full of stories. The invention of nylon, was an accident. And I have had a million accidents. It's like, teach yourself, be in the right place at the right time, keep your eyes open, and shit's gonna happen, right?
So you mentioned you had done Midway video games. How did you get into pinball first? Right, so
I was pitching novelty game ideas and features, and the guys at Premiere, where John Trudeau worked, I walked in one day with a bunch of ideas, and they said, hey, we need a thing, we need to make a pinball climb the stairs, but we don't know how to do it. I said, okay, no problem. So I went away and I made a pinball climb the stairs. We need to make a thing, and so I would show Williams Electronics ideas all the time, and Williams one day said to me, we're never going to buy your ideas. We love your ideas. We're never going to buy them. And the reason is our designers want to design their own ideas. So we're never going to bring in a George Gomez idea and have Steve Ritchie work on it. Steve Ritchie's not going to work on it. Steve Ritchie wants to make his own ideas. So they said, but we'll give you a job. And then you come inside. And so I was hired as the novelty game designer. And at the time, Mark Ritchie had been stolen from Williams by Capcom when they were starting the Capcom pinball division. And unbeknownst to me, fate intervened. And so I was working on a novelty game, a redemption game, Ticket Spitter. And the vice president product development at Williams came to see me and says, I want you to spend 30% of your time on a pinball. 30% of my time, how the hell do I do that? 30%, that's one of those things a management guy would say, right? 30% of my time? Yeah, right, because I work that way. And then 2 weeks later, you come in, I want you to spend 40%. 40%. One day he came screaming into my office, can you do a pinball and be done in a year? Blah, 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 blah. I say, yes, I can do a pinball. So they didn't believe in me, by the way. Brian Eddy, you know who Brian Eddy is, right? His most famous game, Medieval Madness. Brian had been a programmer and he wanted to be a designer, and so he talked them into letting him try a game design. His first game design, Shadow, and Corvette, which was my first game, were going on simultaneously. The reason they did that is because they didn't think I was going to make it, And they figured, hey, we're going to hedge our bets. We got a hole in the production schedule 10 months out, and these guys, these two rookies, are going to try to fill the hole. And so Brian and I were a race to the finish, right? And I just beat them. And so Corvette became the game, and that was that. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, George. My name's Clay. Pleased to meet you. Tell me about Dark Knight in the Costco.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So, you know, what we all want, what we're all interested in is in keeping pinball alive, right? And Stern Pinball, pinball is an incredibly labor-intensive product. You know, if you've ever been to the Stern Pinball factory and watched guys screw stuff to a playfield, or if you fix a pinball machine, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's a complex product with a billion moving parts and you know 30 miles of wire and all this kind of stuff. You know the statistics, right? So they need to be financially viable, and they came within an inch of death. And then Gary, who is like one of the icons of the business, talked some venture capital guys into funding the next few years of pinball. And these venture capital guys are guys that have a lot of retail experience. And they said, you know what, if you talk to anyone in the world, people that don't know pinball, and you say, yeah, I've got a pinball machine, and they go, oh man, I love pinball. How many times have you heard that, right? We've all heard it. Everybody loves pinball, but nobody knows where to go to get it. There are none in the world for them to play anymore because they're not profitable to operate in the traditional way. And so these guys that funded Gary's company said, hey, we can get you into the big box stores like Costco, et cetera, but at the end of the day, this thing's got to be viable, and it's got to be financially viable. So Gary said, okay, we have to take some money out of the game. So there's several efforts to take money out of the game. Some of the efforts entail things like a pinball cabinet is built really rugged because it's intended for street use. But does the one in your house, no one's going to pour beer into the one in your house. No one's going to have a bar fight next to it or, shake it when the money's stuck. So the idea was, hey, let's take some money out of things that don't make a difference, and let's create simpler games for a variety of reasons. One, playing a pinball machine when you've never played a pinball machine is an intimidating concept. No one wants to look like a fool. And pinball is one of those games that you have to educate your eye to the speed of the ball in the playfield, and it takes time. There's no other way to do it. We've all been there, We all learned how to play pinball at one particular moment in time. So the idea is make games simpler, make them easier to understand, and try to make them cost effective. I actually love the Costco Batman, and I'll tell you why. If you get a chance, you should play it. It is not a stripped down version of the game. It is a different game. By making the changes that I made, the game essentially feels different. Now, when you go buy a car, if you had all the money in the world, you'd order every option that you want. And if you are that guy and you can afford what he calls a pro Batman, I think you should buy one. But if you can't, I think you should go get the Costco one. And I made the determination about what was going to come out of the game, and I kept my favorite toy in pinball, that I've ever made, which is that crane. That moving crane is a cool toy. And Gary said to me, can we cost reduce the crane and blah, blah, blah. I said, don't touch the crane. Do not touch the crane. Over my dead body, the crane is coming out. Over my dead body, we're taking one screw out of the crane. Engineering, good engineering is elegant. It's designed to do what it needs to do, no more, no less. And the crane is that way. It was built that way purposely so that it would last, so that it would do all the things it needs to do, so it'd be rugged, etc. Gary said, can't you cost? No, I'm not changing the gauge of the steel. I'm not removing one bearing. I'm not, stop talking. Not going to happen. This kid was asking me about creative integrity. There is a point in time when I jump up and down and say, no, you can't do it. I won't do it. I won't do it. You show up, you want me to do that, I won't do it. So I think it's a cool game. I think it feels different. The rule set's slightly different. It wasn't done carelessly. It was carefully. I mean, Lyman and I worked carefully to make it a viable pinball. It's a viable pinball game. If you have the money, go buy the Pro. If you don't have the money,
What prevents you from putting the Pro software in the Costco version?
stuff is missing, and so it won't work. You know, like, I mean, there's missing, you know, there's switches missing, boards missing, all kinds of stuff missing, and you know, you'll break your game.